Are you thinking about how executions can be wet? Is it because of the blood? Sorry to disappoint you, but no, it's not. The actual story is more interesting than your imagination. But why are we calling this type of execution the wettest execution ever? That you'll get to know soon if you stay tuned until the end. Brace yourself, you're going to witness the wettest execution method ever, keel hauling. So without any further ado, let's start. Ancient methods of torture are infamous for their brutality and inventive methods of causing agonizing pain. Keel hauling is a practice that is not an exception. Keel hauling, a kind of punishment in which the victim is hanged by a rope from the mast of the ship with a weight connected to his legs, is said to have been practiced by the Navy and pirates in the 17th and 18th centuries. The keel serves as the ship's foundation. Typically, not much happens on the keel, but occasionally, sailors would be placed there and tormented or even killed. A seaman would be pulled down to the heel of the ship while being tied to the vessel or to a rope attached to it. In other cases, the sailor would be restrained and have weights fastened to his legs to prevent him from swimming or escaping. Keel hauling was the term used to describe this form of torture. Keel hauling was frequently employed for the worst of sins and trespasses aboard ships, whether it was mutiny or simply becoming too aggressive on a ship. Keel hauling was a punishment mainly intended for sailors and pirates. Although pirates occasionally utilized keel hauling as a means of punishment, the British, French, and Dutch did it considerably more frequently. The poor guys were keel hauled again for 21 seconds, which seemed like hours to the witnesses, at which point they seemed to be probably dead. According to a story, once a ship's officers severely keel hauled the two guys and then showed their gracious hospitality by giving the English reporters smokes and coffee. Cara Goldfarb makes a comment keel hauling was seen as a warning and a message. Keel hauling frequently involved strapping a weight to a victim's legs and causing severe amounts of agony. The victim would be dragged along the ship's bottom on the rope. Additionally, the ship's keel frequently contained barnacles, which caused the victim to sustain cuts and bruises. Typically, these wounds would become infected in the future. The historical reality of keel hauling is still debated, much like other notoriously cruel methods of torture like the blood eagle, scaphism, and immurement. Keel hauling was also less cruel than many of these methods of torture, since it was frequently successful. However, there is unmistakable proof that keel hauling was not only fiction. As horrible as it may seem, there has been much debate over the reality of keel hauling, including how gruesome it was, how frequently it was done, and who exactly utilized it as a form of torture. English writers from the 17th century made reference to the phrase keel hauling in their reports. However, the references are scant and hazy. It is uncommon to come across a thorough description of the procedure as employed by the Royal Navy. The Dutch appear to have left the clearest documentation of the official usage of keel hauling as a form of punishment. A 1660 to 1686 painting by Leib Peters, titled The Keel Hauling of the Ship's Surgeon of Admiral Jan van Ness, is one example. It's housed on the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam. The procedure is described in the painting's description, which mentions that the physician for Dutch Admiral Van Ness was keel hauled. According to the account, the sentenced man was dragged on a rope beneath the keel of the ship as a severe punishment. All seamen received a horrible warning as a result of it. The fact that the sentence also states that the offender is allowed sufficient intervals to recover the sense of pain, of which indeed he is frequently deprived during the operation, however, suggests that the punishment's ultimate purpose is not death. Keel hauling is also described in the British text as a punishment inflicted for various offenses in the Dutch Navy, showing that, at least by 1780, the Royal Navy did not use it. According to reports, the British stopped using keel hauling in about the year 1720, while the Dutch did not formally outlaw the practice as a form of torture until 1750. Even as late as 1882, 2 Egyptian seamen were reported to have been keel hauled, according to the parliamentary papers from the British House of Commons. 2 Egyptian men were court-martialed on September 9, 1882, following an attempted murder outside Alexandria, according to a telegraph. Both guys survived but endured the excruciating suffering after being ordered to be keel hauled under Article 2 of the Egyptian Naval Code. One of the English journalists who saw this keel hauling is quoted in a New York Times piece, and they explained the severity of their wounds. The absence of public records and detailed descriptions make it challenging to determine which countries practice keel hauling and for how long. Keel hauling, however, is neither a made-up story nor an old pirate legend, because it is mentioned in several ancient books and works of art. It's hard to imagine that some naval officers would enjoy this gruesome process. But what are your thoughts on this? Do you think it existed in the prior days? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And for more gruesome and exciting content, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon.